So way back in 1789, there were 13 guys. They were called our founding fathers. They were the first ones who came over from Britain. They wrote the Declaration of Independence, and they decided that we needed a constitution. A constitution is a law of principles created for state and national government. So these are going to be our founding fathers here, okay? So we got our peacock, our little bear, a weird reindeer looking thing, a pug, and then our giraffe, okay? So there were 5 main principles of the Constitution. The first being popular sovereignty, the second one being limited government, the third one being checks and balances, the fourth being separation of powers, and the fifth being federalism. So an example of popular sovereignty would be the presidency, okay? So they have to vote on the elections for that. So let's say this is President Trump, and this is President Hillary, right? And these are all the guys who can vote and back, right? So we've got Mr. Giraffe, Mr. Pug, and Mr. Reindeer looking thing. So all 3 of these guys have to vote for who they want to be president. So let's say the giraffe decides Trump, okay? Mr. Pug decides Hillary, which is a peacock. And then you have your reindeer. He's going to also decide President Trump. So they get the popular vote, which is decided for the people. So that means that Trump would be elected in office. But there's also some other things like the Electoral College, which is a part of the executive branch. That's the main part of the presidency, that each state has representatives based on how many people are in the state. And they get to vote on that too. So for example, Trump this year won both the Electoral College and the popular vote. So separations of powers has 3 branches. So we have the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. So let's see here. Who are we going to do this time? We're going to have Mr. Giraffe be our judicial branch. And then we're going to have former Hillary be our executive. And then this one is going to be our legislative. So this guy right here, he creates the laws. Okay? This guy right here, I said he was my judicial branch. He interprets the laws and makes sure they're followed through. And then the executive branch just enforces the law. So they want to make sure everything works out perfectly, okay? So this would be an example of Trump actually now. Because he's the president, so he can help make the laws. So there's this thing called checks and balances. Checks and balances gives each branch the power to not overpower the other one. So, again, we're going to go back to the 3 branches. We're going to start with executive, legislature, and then judicial, okay? So this guy, we'll treat it like rock, paper, scissors, okay? So he's going to put the rock, and the judicial branch is going to put paper. So this guy beats this guy, and that means he can declare acts of legislature unconstitutional, okay? Because he beat him. So now let's try the other way around. He beats this guy, so he can impeach judges and reject appointment of judges. So that means that they can say, hey, I don't like that judge. They're not going to be in office. And then our executive branch can be in charge of the legislature by vetoing legislation. So that means they can't make the law that they want to go through. And they can propose new laws. But that doesn't mean they're through yet. You have to go through a process where a president passes a bill, which is the proposed law. And yeah. And let's try it the other way around here. Now, if we wanted the executive branch to take charge instead, the legislative, then they can impeach judges, and they can override the veto, reject the appointment of judges, which I went over before, and then they refuse to approve treaties. State. Okay, so that will cover checks and balances then. And then for federalism. Federalism is the government powers distributed between the state and national government. So your national government is the entire United States, okay? And your state government is the smaller of the two. So if we were on a weighing scale, the national government would be worth more. So an example of that would be these things called state income tax. State tax is the one that gets taken out more of because it has to go for things like highways, roads, basic repairs that we need in the United States, okay? And then your income tax is things on like your house and other things like that. So smaller little things. And within these things, within the federalism, are the three types of power: enumerated, concurrent, and reserved. So enumerated powers are ones that are given to those national governments, the one I was talking about before, the big United States. And what they can do is declare war, so they can say, hey, you've done something bad, we're coming after you. They can also print money. They can create an army or navy and regulate trade between state and foreign nations. So that means that they can decide if what's coming in and out of the country. Concurrent powers are the powers shared between federal and state. So basically they can both make laws, they can both create roads, and then they can both collect taxes at the state and national level, like I was talking about before. And then they can also borrow money, establish prisons, so they can create prisons, and then provide general welfare, which means it'll cover things like taking care of you if you get sick at the hospital at a reasonable cost, and more things beyond just that. Ooh, Mr. Bear is falling over, I guess. Ooh. And then we also have, let's see here. I'm going to go back to what the Constitution is. So I explained about the Founding Fathers and how there was 13 of them. But it was really, really, really hard to pass because they had to get all 13 of them to agree on that, okay? So then when they didn't agree, they created this thing called the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights just explained that they could modify the Constitution later on if need be. And the same thing with the amendments. Cut.